John Legend is making his voice heard.
No matter who you are, where you come from, I don't care if you're voting the same as me or not, we want your vote to be counted.
We know this is a historic election, and our partners at 7th Generation want to remind us that our vote today will have an impact on generations to come. So register to vote at 7thgeneration.com/vote for the future. And don't miss the new podcast from iHeartRadio and 7th Generation called Why I'm Voting, where you will hear more reasons to vote. iHeartRadio's Why I'm Voting Countdown to Election Day. Your vote is your voice. Phineas is making his voice heard.
If you care about these issues enough, here is a direct and fast way to articulate that.
We know this is a historic election, and our partners at 7th Generation want to remind us that our vote today will have an impact on generations to come. So register to vote at 7thgeneration.com/vote for the future. And don't miss the new podcast from iHeartRadio and 7th Generation called Why I'm Voting, where you will hear more reasons to vote. iHeartRadio's Why I'm Voting Countdown to Election Day. Your vote is your voice.
On this episode of Newt's World.
To the left, I am a very problematic person. The left would love to own the hearts and minds of gays and lesbians. And I am problematic to them because I am saying that I reject leftist ideology and I reject the agenda that you have for people like me. I am very problematic to the left because I will not play by their rules and I will not help them push their agenda.
Hi, this is Newt. Due to the virus, I'm recording from home, so you may notice a difference in audio quality. You know, I started Newt's World about a year and a half ago because I was intrigued with the number of friends I have who love listening to podcasts, find them a very personal experience, and find some of them entertaining, others educational. And the more I thought about it, the more it seemed to me that the podcast was a great way to connect with you and a great way to learn. So almost all of my podcasts have fascinating guests who I'm learning from while you're learning. And it's turned out to be a terrific way to jointly get educated. And apparently it's working because we've had almost 6 million downloads and listens. And I want to thank all of you for having made it such a remarkable start. We began to think through the notion that Gingrich 360 as a network could develop a content platform where we go out and we find really strong voices and personalities in today's conservative arena. And frankly, in some cases, not necessarily even traditional conservatives, but people who want to think, who want to challenge, who want to explore. And we want to try to develop new podcast series with this kind of unique talent to bring to you a range of opportunities to learn on a much broader basis than just hanging out with Newt Gingrich. So we focus on finding some really interesting people who are broadly conservative, but in a very challenging way. People who are millennials, Generation Z, and from underrepresented communities. And we thought it was very important for the long-term health of the country and the long-term health of the conservative movement that we find people who could become the next generation of leaders and personalities. And over the next 3 months, we're going to be working with iHeart to launch 4 new series that we hope you're going to really enjoy and you're going to want to tell your friends about. The first one is with my next guest, Rob Smith. You know, Rob and I have already talked at length, and he calls himself America's favorite Black, gay, veteran, millennial conservative, which is a pretty long handle. His new show, Rob Smith is Problematic, launches on Tuesday, August 25th on iHeartMedia, Apple Podcasts, and everywhere people get podcasts. Rob, I am delighted to be producing your new show and to have you as my guest today. So welcome to Newt's World. And I wanted to start because I was so fascinated by it. Why did you name the show Rob Smith is Problematic?
Well, first of all, thank you so much. Great to be here and excited to launch the show and actually excited to be working with you. So really appreciate the opportunity. I named the show Rob Smith is Problematic because to the left, I am a very problematic person. So what does problematic mean? Problematic is presenting a problem or a difficulty. So for me, as America's favorite Black, gay, veteran, millennial conservative, I represent a couple of the victim groups that the left thinks that they own. So the left thinks they own the hearts and minds of African Americans. The left would love to own the hearts and minds of gays and lesbians. And I am problematic to them because I am saying that I reject leftist ideology and I reject the agenda that you have for people like me. And I really do identify with a lot of conservative leaning values. And that's what the show Rob Smith is Problematic is about. But I'm not only broadly problematic to the segments on the left that seek to define me, I have some problematic stances for people on both sides of the aisle. And what I think is that if we come together and we talk about these most important issues that are happening in this world today, everybody is going to step outside of that rigid orthodoxy of whatever their side is sometimes. And sometimes they will be problematic to whatever the orthodoxy is on either side. But mainly, I am very problematic to the left because I will not play by their rules and I will not help them push their agenda.
When you take up this kind of position, you're really setting yourself up for a series of fights. Tell us, in your own background, what was your journey to get to this point to make you comfortable being you, even if sometimes you're going to jar people on both the right and the left? What is it about your own past that got you to this point?
Well, I think the most important thing about my past is my military service. So I served for 5 years in the military, did 2 deployments in the Middle East and 1 deployment to Iraq. And I think that the military experience has made me unbreakable in a way. I'm a fighter. I'm a soldier. I fight for what I want and what I believe in. And the reason why I came over to the conservative movement and decided to put my voice out there is because I truly believe, fundamentally, Newt, that all of these minority communities that I belong to, whether it's African American, whether it's gay, and you can even get into minority communities that I don't belong to, Latino American, Asian American, whatever, everybody deserves a choice when it comes to politics. And what I saw was the left saying that if you are this, you cannot be that. If you are Black, you have to be over here. If you're gay, you have to be over here. If you're Latino, you have to be over here. If you're Asian, you have to be over here. And not only that, all of those conservatives and Republicans are racist and hate you anyway. And I thought it was just such a negative and destructive message. And it's also negative and destructive for the future of America. And I decided to take up this fight, and I will keep on fighting because I believe that no matter who you are, what you look like, whatever it is, everybody deserves to, number one, have multiple choices in this political system, but everybody deserves to learn about the ideas of conservatism, because when I started putting these ideas into practice in my own life, my life was changed. That's the message that I want to give to everybody else.
When you look out at the conversations you're having and the wide range of people, because in a sense, your being problematic actually puts you in touch with a lot more people than if you were just easy to pigeonhole and say, oh yeah, you fit this box or that box. As you watch what's happening around you right now, what's your thinking about the scale of unrest we see in the country?
Well, my take on the unrest that we're seeing right now is that there are a lot of African Americans that are being emotionally manipulated by the left. So you have a lot of people who are being told that the biggest problem in their life is this idea of police brutality, this idea of systemic racism, is this idea of basically roving white cops that are running around looking for Black Americans to kill. We both know that that is completely insane. But this is the narrative that the left is pushing right now. And that is why there's so much unrest in this country. I believe, honestly, we have so many conversations about this idea of systemic racism and this idea of police brutality and all that stuff. I don't think that either of those things are in the top 10 problems that the average day-to-day African-American faces. But this is being pushed as a narrative because it helps the left politically. It helps them for African-Americans to feel afraid. It helps them for African Americans to feel weak, and it helps them for African Americans to really feel like we have no place in this country. And that is what a lot of this is all about. This is about pushing the idea that people feel displaced and attacked and not a part of America. And that's what I think the fundamental root to all of this is. And I don't think that this is something that we get past in one election cycle or two. It needs to be a complete shift and change of the entire conversation.
From your perspective, how do we find a way for African Americans to feel more comfortable and more part of the country?
I think that we focus more on Black success. Look, Newt, we have more African-American millionaires than at any point in time in American history. There is more Black success right now than we have ever seen. But yet there are people out there, and I'm talking about the same athletes, entertainers, celebrities that are always used by the left to push these victimhood narratives and agendas. These people are living lives that the average person, Black or white, couldn't even dream of, and yet they are still ensconced in these victimhood narratives. So I think that we make African Americans feel like more of a part of this country, number one, by highlighting the ways that we have helped to build this country outside of slavery. There's way too much of a focus on slavery and the legacy of slavery in America, and we get that, and we have talked about that ad nauseum. But there are so many different ways that African Americans have contributed to America, and we really need to start focusing on that, and we have to start focusing on the massive amount of success. Entrepreneurship. We have so many people that are doing very well, and I think that you focus more on that. And you open up this idea that America is for everybody. Just like I say, conservatism is for everybody. America is for everybody. And any American in this country, no matter what your color is, does themselves a disservice by not wanting to be a part of this, by rejecting a place that has so much opportunity for success for all Americans.
John Legend is making his voice heard.
No matter who you are, no matter where you come from, I don't care if you're voting the same as me or not, we want your vote to be counted.
Every one of us has a reason to vote. That's millions of voices that need to be heard. And that's why iHeartRadio launched the Why I'm Voting podcast, a place where music artists, celebrities, and people like you talk about why they vote and why it matters.
We have to actively maintain our democracy, and the only way that we do that, we're all citizens here, and the only sure way that we can hold them accountable is to make sure we participate in these elections.
We know this is a historic election, and our partners at Seventh Generation want to remind us that our vote today will have an impact on generations to come. So register to vote at seventhgeneration.com/vote for the future. And don't miss the new podcast from iHeartRadio and Seventh Generation called Why I'm Voting, where you will hear more reasons to vote. iHeartRadio's Why I'm Voting Countdown to Election Day. Your vote is your voice. Phineas is making his voice heard.
If you care about these issues enough to voice your opinion in any other way, here is a direct and fast way to articulate that.
Every one of us has a reason to vote. That's millions of voices that need to be heard. And that's why iHeartRadio launched the Why I'm Voting podcast, a place where music artists, celebrities, and people like you talk about why they vote and why it matters.
It is the legal right of an American citizen to vote, and I think that is worth exercising. Part of the reason it's worth exercising is if you exercise it and really follow your heart on that, it's not a right that'll get taken away.
We know this is a historic election, and our partners at Seventh Generation want to remind us that our vote today will have an impact on generations to come. So register to vote at seventhgeneration.com/vote for the future. And don't miss the new podcast from iHeartRadio and Seventh Generation called Why I'm Voting, where you will hear more reasons to vote. iHeartRadio's Why I'm Voting Countdown to Election Day. Your vote is your voice.
How do we change that underlying story where people feel that it is more appropriate to focus on the negative? I'm a little bit like you in that I watch multi-millionaire football players and basketball players who are explaining that you can't succeed in America. And I'm kind of wondering, how do you even start that conversation?
I think that when you have people that are so highly successful and they talk about, oh, it's so hard, it's easy for somebody to point to them and say they're the anomaly. LeBron James is the anomaly. Rapper, actor, entertainer, these are anomalies. But for the normal person, it's hard. So let's start highlighting and let's start having more voices from the normal people that are entrepreneurial success stories. I think that with Black America, there is such a huge focus on entertainment industry. There's not a focus on the everyday millionaire next door that happens to be Black, that happens to own their own business, that happens to talk about entrepreneurship. So there's not enough conversation about entrepreneurship and wealth creation. And when you have more of those conversations, you inadvertently start elevating and sharing the messages of these people who have been successful in that way, who are African American. I think that that is who people need to be looking at.
From your perspective, how do you see gays and lesbians engaging with conservatism? And what is it that has attracted you that makes you feel comfortable that, in fact, this is a viable philosophy from your standpoint?
Well, this is what I think. It's the stereotype of gays and lesbians that, wealthier, more educated, dual income, no kids most of the time. But I think that even beyond that, there are so many gays and lesbians in this country, and I always come back to entrepreneurship. These people are entrepreneurs. We pay taxes. We want to be a part of America. I am blessed to know lots of conservative leaning gays and lesbians that, like I said, are business owners, entrepreneurs, pay taxes, believe in conservative values in the terms of limited government and everything else. And it's very important for me when I'm speaking to you and when I'm speaking to a conservative audience that you have to separate gays and lesbians from what I call the far left LGBTQ cult. Because the far left LGBTQ cult is not about America. They don't care about America. They want to subvert and destroy America. And the saddest part is when I look at all these gays and lesbians in America who have so much to offer, that they are being sucked into that nonsense because they don't know that there's any other way to be. They don't know that there's a place for them in the conservative movement. They don't know that there's a place for them in the Republican Party. I've tried to be one of these people that shows that place. You look at somebody like the amazing Rick Grinnell, who was I believe, the highest openly gay man to serve in any president's administration ever. And we're talking Republican or Democrat. So these are the types of people that are breaking the barriers. People like me, people like Rick, you've got your Dave Rubins of the world. And so I think that we have to be the example for this younger generation that is looking at some of the more insane elements of the far left LGBTQ, and they're saying that I do not align with that. That is not me. I don't want to be like all of those crazy people. I look at Rick, or I look at Rob, or I look at Dave, or I look at Tammy Bruce, and I want to be like these people. So I think that that is what we have to contribute. I think that gays and lesbians, for the most part, are pretty strong conservatives, like I said, because of the money and the entrepreneurial aspect. But we just need people to break those barriers, and that's one of the things that I'm trying to do.
So when you think about the country 20 or 30 years from now, what's your intuition? What kind of country do you think we'll be?
Newt, we are in probably the biggest political realignment that we've seen in quite some time. And I believe that the left realizes this, which is why they are trying so hard to ignore it. And they're trying so hard to make it seem like Republicans and conservatives are racist and sexist and homophobic and all these different things. There are more African Americans in the Republican Party. There are more Latinos. There are more people of color. And these people are all connecting to the aspects of conservatism. So when you ask me what America is going to look like in 20, 30 years, I think it's going to look very, very differently. I think that there's going to be a lot of people just like me, regardless of color, who are looking at the messages that are being pushed by the left and are saying that this does not work for me. This does not work in my life. I need something different. And I think that more people are going to be attracted to conservatism. When you look at what's going on the streets right now, when you look at all of these Twitter videos that you see of people being attacked by BLM protesters on the street, when you see all of this stuff, people see this. And they see it as something that they don't want to be a part of. What I would love for America to look like in the next 20, 30 years is a place where we can discuss ideas and not identities so much. Because all the left has is identity. And the only thing they have is victimhood politics to push to people that have these multiple identities, right? These different identities. So I hope that America in 20 to 30 years looks like people that are having a conversation about values, and about ideas. Because if we don't start talking about American values and we don't start talking about ideas, then the American experiment, I believe, will fail, Newt. And I don't think anybody wants that.
So in that context, what do you think the future of each of the two political parties is?
So my idea of the future of the Republican Party is a party that is more inclusive. And when I say inclusive, I don't mean the diversity trap, because diversity just means that you just want a bunch of people that look differently but all think the same. I think that the Republican Party will be more inclusive in terms of people of different colors. And I think that people will start talking about ideas. And you're going to have more people attracted to the Republican Party, and they're going to start saying that America is for us too, and that is what we want, because we want everybody to know that America is for them. As far as the Democrats, I think that they're circling down the identity politics drain right now. They are getting so crazy in so many different ways. And a part of the Rob Smith is Problematic podcast is I want to break down a lot of the things that people may not be aware of. I talked about some of this stuff in my book, Always a Soldier, but there's so many things that are happening. When you look at Joe Biden, this is the nominee for president on the Democratic side. And he literally said that men belong in women's prisons if they identify as a woman. That is a very fringe take on that whole subject, but that is what it is. And so it's being hidden. So I think that in the Democratic Party, all of the stuff that's on the fringes is going to come to light. We see a lot of it coming to light right now, and they're going to have to do some real soul searching as to who they are as a party and who they want to attract for the future. Because I do not know that going down this road is the road to success for them.
I really think the media has not done them any favors by allowing them to accumulate all of these ideas without aggressive criticism, because it's almost like the longer that they have been drifting in this direction, the more acceptable it has been inside their world to come up with really strange things. And that in the absence of pushback, you can't tell what makes sense and what doesn't. And so in a way, they're being done a disservice by the media itself, because they're not in any way having to argue out these things and modify them and say, well, maybe not. I think your point is exactly right. Listen, I think you're going to be great at this. I think you are so knowledgeable and so willing to stand on your own 2 feet and be who you are. And now, I'm pleased to introduce an exclusive sneak peek of his new podcast, Rob Smith is Problematic.
I am Rob Smith, and I am problematic. The most important principle to being problematic is thinking for yourself. We live in an era now where people are allowing others to do their thinking for them. We have outsourced our thought to entertainers, to celebrities, to social media influencers, to politicians, anything that we can do so that we don't dare have an original thought, so that we don't dare think for ourselves, right? So thinking for yourself is the number one fundamental principle of being problematic, because you only run into problematic moments when you are thinking for yourself. That conservative that's defending the rights of gays and lesbians to exist in the conservative movement in the Republican Party is thinking for themselves in that moment, because it's easier for them to just stay silent when somebody says, oh, I don't want these gays here, especially if it's in an area or if it's in a surrounding that makes it uncomfortable, that makes that an uncomfortable conversation. For someone on the left, thinking for themselves may be, look, guys, maybe we shouldn't defund the police. Maybe communities actually need police. Maybe police officers save lives. You know, I don't want to be there for that conversation on the left because it will not end well. But that is a person on the left that is being problematic to that rigid orthodoxy that I keep telling you all about. So thinking for yourself, guys, is crucial towards being problematic, because there are so many people out there, and there are so many voices, and there are so many entities, and there are so many organizations, and there are so many politicians, and there are so many political movements, and there are so many things that depend on you not thinking for yourself. They depend on you listening to whatever they say and taking it as gold. When you look at what's going on politically right now and the political climate that we're in right now, there's no way that some of these people could get away with the things that they say with a straight face if they were not dependent on the idea that most people are not thinking for themselves anymore. Most people are just retweeting. Most people are just reforming their thoughts based on whatever their favorite politician or celebrity or entertainer or activist or whoever says. So thinking for yourself is the most important principle of being problematic. It is, I believe, the fundamental, foundational principle of being problematic.
I think people are going to find it fascinating. And I want to remind everybody who's listening to us to download and listen to Rob Smith is Problematic anywhere you get your podcasts, or you can go to Gingrich360.com and find our full family of podcasts easily organized for you to listen to. Rob, I think you're going to be terrific at continuing to grow and develop and think these things through. So I want to thank you for joining me today and having this conversation.
Anytime. And again, thank you, Newt, for the opportunity. Greatly, greatly appreciate it.
Thank you to my guest, Rob Smith. You can hear his new podcast at Gingrich360.com/Rob Smith Podcast. Newt's World is produced by Gingrich 360 and iHeartMedia. Our executive producer is Debbie Myers, and our producer is Garnsey Sloan. The artwork for the show was created by Steve Penley. Special thanks to the team at Gingrich 360. Please email me with your questions at Gingrich360.com/questions. I'll answer them in future episodes. If you've been enjoying Newt's World, I hope you'll go to Apple Podcasts and both rate us with 5 stars and give us a review so others can learn what it's all about. In the next episode of Newt's World, Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden participated in a federal government program to build low-income housing in single-family home neighborhoods. Westchester County, New York, is an example of how this federal policy went wrong. My guest, Rob Astorino, describes how he fought back for his residents when he was Westchester County Executive. I'm Newt Gingrich. This is Newt's World.
Phineas is making his voice heard.
If you care about these issues enough, here is a direct and fast way to articulate that.
We know this is a historic election, and our partners at 7th Generation want to remind us that our vote today will have an impact on generations to come. So register to vote at 7thgeneration.com/vote for the future. And don't miss the new podcast from iHeartRadio and 7th Generation called Why I'm Voting, where you will hear more reasons to vote. iHeartRadio's Why I'm Voting Countdown to Election Day. Your vote is your voice. John Legend is making his voice heard.
No matter who you are, where you come from, I don't care if you're voting the same as me or not. We want your vote to be counted.
We know this is a historic election, and our partners at 7th Generation want to remind us that our vote today will have an impact on generations to come. So register to vote at 7thgeneration.com/vote for the future. And don't miss the new podcast from iHeartRadio and 7th Generation called Why I'm Voting, where you will hear more reasons to vote. iHeartRadio's Why I'm Voting Countdown to Election Day. Your vote is your voice.